Other interesting political news, you have the EPA to increase auto emission standards and force more EV upon us. Rest in peace, the free market. Now, this was brought to us thanks to Rob Sachs at LinkedIn News, and they note that, quote, tougher rules from the Environmental Protection Agency will cut 7 billion tons of carbon emission from cars, SUVs, and light trucks for the model years between 2027 and 2032. The new standards will also give the auto industry more time to meet President Joe Biden's goal of having EVs account for 56% of new passenger vehicle sales by 2032. Yep. Well, and they also consider, say, quote, while the new rules don't require automakers to sell more EVs by a specific date, manufacturers will likely produce more EVs to follow the new rule. Amendments of the new regulations comes amid slowing EV sales, unquote. It's such BS. It's not technically a ban. They're just saying, it's one of those things where they're not coming out and saying, hey, we're going to ban the V8. We're going to kill sports cars and having fun while driving. No, they're saying is you have to meet these standards. Well, guess what? Can't hit those standards? Internal combustion engines. That's why more and more EVs are being thrust upon the American public. It's not just consumer demand. There's about 18 people who want them. Kidding. Maybe 23. But the reason you're seeing such big push for EVs from a manufacturer perspective is because they're being forced to by a de facto ban. Because again, they're saying, oh yeah, here's the new emission standards for your fleet. So your fleet average, the average of all the vehicles that you sell, has to be a certain amount of carbon, more or less, whatever. And yet, if it's all ICE engines, you won't hit those arbitrary BS numbers. So they're pushing more and more EVs, which ironically, depending on where you live and how you charge them and the methodology in which you charge them, actually do more damage to the environment. And also, most of them are still disposable for now because of the batteries. Batteries are $20,000 to $30,000. Whereas if my good old Honda Civic with the manual transmission should be the default by every vehicle and an ICE engine, well, if anything goes wrong with my engine, I can just get it replaced for maybe a couple $1,000 at the scrapyard. With an EV battery, it's what? 10, 20, 30, 40 grand for a battery. So the long-term life cycle, I would say good old Japanese engineering with internal combustion engine is still the best for now. Now, I'll scroll down and we'll see some of the comments here, because again, LinkedIn is usually, I would say politically speaking, more left-leaning in terms of the posts that you see and most of the comments. But as this is, again, this has become also a political issue as well. That's why it's in the politics part of the podcast. The government's intervening with the private sector, intervening and telling the automotive manufacturers how to run their own business instead of having the free market and the consumers decide. I mean, how fewer people would have an EV if they didn't have a $7,500 tax incentive waiting in front of them? I mean, it is being pushed upon us in a myriad of ways. It's not just tax incentives, but it's also bullying the automotive manufacturers and actually penalizing them as well. I think Ford is facing a $1.3 billion fine due to emissions not being hit or having trucks, or I forget the fuel standard that they're hitting, but they're being fined and taxed extra because they're making ICE vehicles. Now, one of the first comments comes from William Poge saying, quote, we don't have the power infrastructure to support this law by 2030. It will take over 10 years to construct a new nuclear power plant. I drove through a new large apartment complex where there are no EV chargers. Where are cities like New York City going to charge their cars and trucks? I was in France last year and people used street chargers as parking spots, plugged in but not charging. Also, our safety infrastructure guardrails and such are not designed for heavy EVs. I have not purchased a new car since 1984. I cannot afford a new EV. Both of our cars will make 200,000 miles, so good for another 20 years. For over 20 years, Toyota claims it'll produce a new EV with a 700-mile range in 3 to 4 years. So who knows where technology will be in 6 years? But the U.S. will have to get the power infrastructure upgrade costing trillions of dollars. Very true. Because again, it's kind of like California. They're banning ICE cars by, I believe, 2030 or 2035, and they've already banned things like gas-powered lawnmowers and generators too. So if you lose the power because the government decides to shut it down in California, you also can't power your own house because they banned the sale of new diesel generators and gas generators for your house. Fascinatingly enough, people still live there, believe it or not. And it's the 10th, and again, importance of politics, that ban matters in California because it's the 10th largest automotive economy on the planet, bigger than some countries. Going down to other comments, you have Joshua Miller saying, quote, yeah, because this has always worked out well for the government when they want to try to force markets to do something that the consumers do not want. People do not want EVs. That is proven. If they wanted to buy EVs, then they wouldn't have bought them. Car makers are losing millions to billions of dollars on EV sales. I for one, refuse to buy one. There's no upside to buying them and tons of downside. Nothing more than draconian laws being passed by supposed government that is supposed to be about freedom. Alice shrugged. Anyone? They already did the EV truck. It will be a complete failure for anyone that uses a truck as a truck. We can't do anything with it. You can't do anything with a normal truck. You can't do anything with it that a normal truck does better, unquote. Getting 15 likes, which, again, there are some benefits to EVs. There's less traditional maintenance on the vehicle. If you're leasing it, that actually could be a pretty good ROI because, again, the biggest detriment is the battery degradation and having to replace the battery someday. And I actually know some of my friends who are leasing an EV at a lower price point than pretty much anything out there. So, again, there is some upside, but like most things in life, it depends on the application, the situation. If you want to own a vehicle for 20 years, no, EVs are garbage. My family bought a 2001 Honda Accord, new, and it's got an internal combustion 4-cylinder engine. It still runs like a champ. That's the brilliance of traditional Japanese engineering. It just works. And the ICE engine is less complex. There's less things that can break. So I should clarify. There are different things that can break overall because of the software issues. There's less pieces in an EV, like components, but I would actually argue it'd be more susceptible because there's so much software and code put into them and so much additional information capacity from that regard. Also, malicious actors can also hack into them and, cause your car to just crash. But I'm sure, malicious actors in the government would never do that. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah, they would. Let's see here. Let's do one or two more comments. Because again, there's probably people that are going to give this statement accolades. They want to get rid of your choice to have an ICE engine. They want you to all have buy EVs. Let's see here. There are a couple of people talking about getting hydrogen cars, which, again, hydrogen works, but it's the production of the hydrogen. Production, transportation, and all that is the bottleneck with hydrogen technology. We've had hydrogen vehicles for decades. I mean, Toyota has a racing Corolla, I believe this model, that they actually did a hybrid drivetrain. Or not hybrid, I'm sorry, a hydrogen drivetrain, and it works perfectly. The issue is, again, you have to manufacture the hydrogen and transport it economically. And right now, we don't have the technology. It's not there yet. Let's scroll down there a little bit more. A lot of people are saying how Toyota is being vindicated, since, again, Toyota was one of the companies that didn't go all in on EV, and they've been vindicated because the biggest growing segment of the auto industry that people are adopting is hybrid technologies. Like, granted, me, I would only get an ICE engine if I want a car to last forever and have fun and, smile every day and shift 3 pedals. But that's just me. Let me know in the comments, do you think, is the Supreme Court going to shoot this down? I mean, EPA seems to have more and more power. I don't see anywhere in the Constitution where it says the government, the EPA should even exist or do this. But let me know. As always, if you're fascinated here, what you have to say. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to tune in. Again, trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of the month. So if you could click that button, I would greatly appreciate it. Also, leaving a thumbs up, thumbs down, or a comment is a great way to give me some additional feedback, letting me know how I can make the show better and better. Lastly, don't forget to take the time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.